So after 500 startups, how did you get started with, I mean, the whole investing landscape right now is also sort of very different, right? We have AngelList India, we have Let's Venture, and we have a lot of angel communities, angel networks, and you've now, I mean, working with AngelList India, right? So how did that come about?
So, AngelList India, I've known AngelList for many years. There's probably multiple talks I gave in 2010, 2011 on AngelList in India when I was living there. I've known Utsav, who runs AngelList India, for many years also. Utsav reached out to me when he first joined AngelList India and asked me to come on board and be an advisor. And I, have been a big fan of AngelList for many years. So I said yes. And during that time, Utsav was working on some other things also that I also supported. And when they decided that they're going to raise a small fund for backing syndicates in AngelList India, he asked me to come on board and be a part of the investment committee. So yeah, I said yes, sure. And the idea was basically, if you are an angel investor, you bring your deal onto the AngelList platform. We will look at the deal, and we will also decide whether to write a check to support that syndicate lead. That's the whole idea. And I don't remember the numbers now, but I think I want to say that we've done a few dozen investments in the course of a year and a half.
And
Yeah.
you're part of the investment committee, right? Like, how does AngelList
Yes.
India, I mean, what is the thesis in, or the lens that you guys look when you're funding startups? Because I'm assuming not every startup or every syndicate that is bought is funded.
Correct.
So what is the lens that the investment committee, or you in particular, are looking at when you are investing?
So, our default decision is to say yes, because the way that we look at it is, if there is a active angel investor who is bringing a deal onto the AngelList platform, this individual has likely done a good amount of due diligence on the deal already, has a thesis, has written up the thesis, has shared that thesis with people that are backing them on the platform. So, there's multiple proof points that are already in place. So the way that we look at it is, the collective, which is the fund, the AngelList India Fund, the default option is to invest, because we want to index the startups that are raising money in India, right? So we're not focused on a sector, we're not focused on a stage, nothing. It's like, hey, these are all the deals that are happening on the AngelList platform, so let's index them. The times that we would say no to a deal is because of potentially something that is a red flag. So, if we really don't think that something's going to work, it's like, I'm too firmly against what the startup is doing. Okay, fine, say no. If you feel like there's just too much competition in a particular space, or if you feel like this is food delivery 2015, where everyone's just piling in with ridiculous valuations and things don't make sense, okay, you can choose to say no. Because at the end of the day, we do need to be cognizant of the fact that, there's a check being written and it has to make sense, right? So rather than, approaching it like a VC or an angel that, perhaps doesn't have a default yes or no, we approach it with a default yes. We believe that there's been enough due diligence done on all of these deals before they appear on the AngelList platform. So these are good deals for us to likely say yes to unless there's something really, really, really strongly one of us believe in that is a reason not to write a check. And we operate very quickly. We usually make a decision within 24 hours of the deal appearing on the platform. We go very simply by a majority rule, right? So where there are three of us on the IC, if two of us say yes and one says no, the deal happens. If two of us say yes and the third person didn't even get a chance to look at the deal, it's already done. We need two people to say yes.
Mhm.
So it moves very quickly. And we don't operate in the sense that we are doing weekly IC calls and reviewing all the deals all at one time. We operate in real time. So if a deal comes onto the platform today, it'll be shared with us today. We'll get a chance to review it and ask questions, and we do that all in real time.
So to me, as an outsider or sort of an LP who looked at AngelList India, to me it looks like the collective is sort of the main thesis or the main function of the collective is to when you compare it with like AngelList US versus India, you have this. I mean, even if you compare any number of factors, right, whether the deal flow, number of startups created, or number of investors, number of VC funds, I mean, it's 10x more in US versus India. And to me, collective looks like, okay, we are going to be a supportive fund to create this ecosystem. To me, as an outsider, it looks like that. Is that a fair assessment?
Mm, Not really. I mean, I think that's one of the things that the collective does, but the collective, at the end of the day, it's a fund. It needs to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we don't think a startup or a syndicate lead is investing in something that we think is going to eventually lead to a positive outcome, then we're not going to invest in that. Um, if we think that there is, at the end of the day, it's a fund and it has to make money, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we approach it with that perspective. But, we also recognize that AngelList syndicates are, or syndicates in general, are a relatively new thing in India.
Mm-hmm.
And, in some cases, a syndicate lead might get a 50 lakh allocation. In other cases, you might get a 5 crore allocation into a company. Well, where's that syndicate lead going to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now, as you look at AngelList India today, you're going to see more funds running syndicates on the platform,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not just individuals, but it's also funds running syndicates, because it's a great way for you to round out a deal with people that can be helpful,
Mm-hmm.
can be value add, and um, will help the company. So, for example, and I mean, you see this in the U.S. also in AngelList US, and AngelList India is starting to follow that same model, where funds might have invested in a company, and you now have pro rata in that company, and let's say it's 3 years in, your fund is now exhausted. You can't write another follow-on check into the company, or maybe you can write one, but it's a smaller check than the allocation that your pro rata has. So you open up that pro rata to other people to come into, and whatever carry comes out of that goes back to your LPs. So it's kind of a win-win for a lot of funds as well. So yes, it is, part of it is about building the ecosystem. Part of it is about getting into deal flow that you wouldn't necessarily be able to otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So on a similar tangent, right? Like, how are you thinking about syndicate leads? Like, are you actively, reaching out to individuals, ex-founders to create syndicates, or are, active angel investors coming and becoming syndicate leads? How are you thinking about who's the next syndicate lead?
Yeah, so I think, early on, it was more of an outbound model where we went out to people that we knew were active angel investors, people that we knew had access to high quality deal flow, and kind of handheld them in setting up a syndicate and walking through it. Uh, but what was that, like 3 years ago? So I think a lot has changed now. We don't really need to go out and invite people to start an AngelList syndicate. Like, if you're an angel investor in India, you know that AngelList India exists,
Yeah.
and you know what the value add for you as an angel investor is. So you might have some questions. You might need some support in kind of just running through the process, but it's no longer like, hey, this is why you should do it. You should open one up. I think pretty much everyone who is actively investing
Mm-hmm.
has some sort of syndicate. Whether they're actually doing deals or not is a different story. Like, I've had an AngelList syndicate for many years, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to do a single deal in my India AngelList syndicate because all the companies that I have wound up investing in are registered as Singaporean entities or US entities.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't do those deals in India. And the couple that I did into Indian private limited companies had very small allocations that were available. So I couldn't bring them to the syndicate. Um, so my syndicate essentially is inactive right now, but it's still there. And if I come across a deal, I can put it on the syndicate immediately, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that changes the game for me as an individual angel investor. I can say, you know what, instead of writing a 25 lakh check into a company, I can now write a 5 lakh check and raise another 45 lakhs from a bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have 50 lakhs into the company. I get carry on that. And, you know, it's a huge win for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can invest in more companies with a lot more leverage, because now I can go to the founders and say, hey, I know I can get 50 lakhs or a crore into your company. So even the founders can be like, well, great. We don't have to deal with, one person who's putting in 5 lakhs. We'll deal with one person who's putting in a crore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think it changes the dynamics considerably. And I think a lot of angel investors in India have finally seen this and have decided that it makes sense for them, as well as a lot of angel investors that are planning to raise a fund
Mm-hmm.
of their own. For them also, it's been great, because now they can say, okay, let me invest in 10 companies. Let me invest 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs each in 10 companies, instead of investing, 15 lakhs in 2 companies.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can build out a broader portfolio much more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And because now it's on the platform, you can now go out and you can hopefully, in a lot of cases, show movement in that portfolio relatively quickly. So when you go out to raise a fund, you can now show at least paper markups on your portfolio relatively quickly. So a lot of aspiring fund managers are also using AngelList India for that.
Yeah, I've been following some of the early stage fund managers, and some of them are doing a really phenomenal job. I mean, funding some great companies
Yeah.
in the last couple of years. Uh,